Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Steve and Katie. Today we have a special edition where Stephen is going to share his research on climate change.
How you doing, Katie? I'm very excited to talk to our listeners about this special segment on climate change, and especially in regards to real estate risk and investments. So, I've always been an environmental guy my entire life. Ever since I was a little kid, when my mom had me try to see why the avocado tree in the backyard wasn't producing fruit. I really got into gardening to when I went to Boy Scout camp and saw the first forest ranger ever, and that's what I wanted to be. Of course, I volunteer as a ranger during the weekends, but I've also been a climate change skeptic in the sense that I didn't believe climate change was real. I knew that the planet was warming. I think that's undeniable, but I thought it was due to natural causes because the planet does go from cold to hot to cold to hot in different cycles, and this is over, 100,000 years maybe. But I didn't think that climate change was changing because of man-made greenhouse gases, namely carbon dioxide, hydrofluorocarbons, and other GHGs. But when I started to read about it and understand it, it became clear to me that I was wrong and that man is really responsible for a lot of what's happening with global warming. So to really understand it, as usual, I go to school. And so right now I'm working on another doctorate and my dissertation is going to be on strategies to mitigate climate change risk in real estate. And I'm doing this through Business School Lausanne, which is a very good top-rated European business school if you look at the QS rankings. So just a little background of this is the climate, the temperatures have increased about 1 degree since 1900. And it could project, and of course it's not perfect science, but it could increase anywhere from another 1.5 degrees to 4 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100. And what does that mean for us investors? Well, first of all, if you take a look at this picture on the first slide, this is Holland Island in the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. And because of rising sea levels, this house and this island is underwater. And if you think about it, that glaciers will melt, Antarctic ice will melt, Arctic ice will melt, and that will raise sea levels. For example, in Boston Back Bay, sea levels are already rising where it's flooding basements. And so there's going to be vulnerable areas in the country that are, going to have sea level rises, and it'll affect real estate. If you remember, in one of the coffees, we went down to Balboa Island, and we saw where they had to raise the seawall because the ocean water was starting to flood more of Balboa. Let's go to the next slide. So what is the purpose of this study? It's to give real estate people some sort of strategies on how to mitigate and adapt to this climate change here. And we can see that, for example, when we have more occurrences of hurricanes, and hurricanes are occurring much more and they're more deadlier due to warmer weather, that cities like New Orleans, that is 12 feet below sea level, will be impacted. If we take a look at San Francisco Bay, that's another vulnerable area, which I will talk about in a moment. Next slide. So this is the scientific data. I mean, there's no dispute. You know, the politicians are always constantly talking about scientific data, right, in regards to COVID. Well, it's no different than with climate change. And I don't think we can dispute the scientific data with climate change. And this is just a chart that we got from the International Panel on Climate Change from the UN. And it just shows the projected level of temperatures rising. We don't know exactly how much it's going to rise, but there is some great scientific modeling that will basically show us a correlation between the amount of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases that will lead to a rise in temperature. Even if we said that there was not going to be any more increase in greenhouse gases, some of the natural warming of the planet will lead to increased temperatures, which will lead to oceans rising. So part of it is man-made and part of it is natural, because the Earth goes in cycles, like we said, from cold to hot, hot to cold. And we're in a warming cycle. So part of it is natural, but a lot of this is man-made. It has really accelerated since the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s. And we can really see that a lot of the increase in the temperature change has been, caused by man. Next slide. So what's interesting is, and we're not going to do it in today's segment, but we're going to probably have a segment on MIT's Climate Change Interactive Simulation. As you know, I received my advanced executive certificate in strategy, innovation, and leadership from MIT. And I went through a sustainability course, and we used this climate change interactive simulation. And on the simulation, you can play around with the knobs and the buttons to change the models. You know, some of it is like, okay, if we increase 1 trillion trees, how will that affect climate change? If we don't do any more deforestation in the Amazon, how will that affect climate change? If we use more renewables and less fossil fuels, how will that affect climate change? So I think it's a very instructive exercise that really opens your eyes up on what we need to do. So let's go to the next slide. So the NOAA, which is part of the Department of Commerce, which is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, has a map. And this map, you can put in any city or any locale or county and see how, if the temperature goes up by X, how much increased coastline or flooding will occur. Well, we did one on Newport Beach. It's really not that bad. I mean, in a sense, maybe the beaches would be wiped out, and certain sections of Balboa Island or the mouth of the Santa Ana River would be really affected. But the majority of Newport Beach would not be affected. Huntington Beach, interestingly enough, because of the way it faces the ocean and the coastal zone, would be much more affected. But when you go to the map and put in San Francisco Bay, you can see that the San Francisco International Airport and the Oakland Airport would be flooded and non-usable. In essence, the San Francisco International Airport is only 3 feet above sea level. So if temperatures go 4 degrees up, sea levels could go up to 7 feet increase. And we can see evidence of this already happening in Bangladesh and in Asia. Let's go to the next slide. So what is the problem statement as I see it? A lot of real estate's going to be underwater by 2100. And of course, I did a review of literature to make sure that I didn't like invent this or come up with some sort of idea that isn't backed by real evidence, right? And climate change is going to be a big factor on the investment of real estate. For example, let's say Huntington Beach gets flooded 5 miles inland. What does that mean? The power plant at Huntington Beach would have to be relocated. Highway 1 would have to be relocated. Some land of the businesses along the current Highway 1 would have to be abandoned. Maybe certain areas on Pacific Coast Highway in Newport might have to be built up or on fill and reconstructed. There's a lot of issues right now that are unresolved, but you know, it's something we should think about. Next slide. So what is the research question? Okay, our managers of real estate, are they thinking about this? Are governments thinking about this? I think the City Council of Newport Beach is thinking about it, but how many people are really thinking about it? Have you thought about it? If you live on Balboa Island or you live on the peninsula, have you thought about it? Have you thought about it when the streets periodically flood? What is going on? So I think companies and investors need strategies on how to cope with this. Next slide. So what is some of the research that we have to get done to come up with a comprehensive plan or an idea how to combat this? Well, look, we have to get sources from different areas. We have to go to government. We have to go to business. We have to go to non-government agencies. And we have to also look at other research that has been done on this. For example, in Florida, in certain parts of Miami-Dade County, the sea is only 2-3 feet above sea level. And more importantly, the soils down in Florida are limestone, lime calcareous soils, which means that even if ocean waters don't rise, it will seep into the soil, cause liquefaction, and cause building problems to happen. When I was an undergrad, I had to take an earthquake engineering class, and I learned about liquefaction. And I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but what happens is an earthquake, if your house is built on fill, like it is on Balboa Island, and it shakes a lot, seawater will seep into that fill if the earthquake is strong enough. Well, that could pose a problem. There's a lot of expensive real estate on Balboa, but it also includes a lot of the San Francisco Bay, because San Francisco Bay has been filled in for development by fill. And Foster City is a perfect example of that, where a really bad earthquake might liquefy the soil and you know, cause damage. Well, it's the same with climate change. If sea levels rise, soils could be liquefied. So we still have to do a lot of research on this type of thinking. Next slide. So why is this research important? Well, 40% of the population of the world's population live within coastal areas. It's projected that there could be, at the low end, almost $1 trillion worth of real estate affected. Personally, I have not gotten into the literature yet. I think that it's going to be much higher. We have to mitigate and adapt. In other words, we got to mitigate the problem by maybe taking a look at what Holland has done to keep the North Sea out with their you know, channels and locks and dams. We have to look how we have to adapt. So if we have military installations or airports, maybe we have to move them inland. So we have to take a look at those type of things and start to think about how we're going to deal with this, because climate change is going to happen. It's not like we can take a switch and just say, oh, all of a sudden, we're not going to generate any more greenhouse gases. So the sea will rise because glaciers, Arctic ice, Antarctic ice are melting. And as the more they melt, the more the sea will rise. How much exactly? This is a unknown question. Models are not perfect, but it will rise. So we need to start thinking about that today. Next slide. So when we do our reach design, we're going to do it with questionnaires. We're going to look at websites. We're going to talk to management. We're going to talk to government agencies. We're going to come up with a questionnaire, and then we're going to tabulate the data using Excel, regression analysis, and some high computer power. Next paper, next, yeah. Okay, so what are the different stages of collection? We're going to interview people, use focus groups, and like I said, websites. Next. So what is the knowledge contribution? I don't want to do this if we don't have any knowledge contribution. What I think it will do, it will give us, as investment managers, other investment managers, folks like you who live in low-lying areas, some strategies on how to deal with this. So for example, I have a cabin in Lake Arrowhead. As the climate temperature increases, we're going to have more wildfires. We saw that in California this year with 5 million acres burning. And so when you're in vulnerable areas like the Sierra Nevadas or Lake Arrowhead, it's only a matter of time before fire gets to it. So should I be thinking about selling it and moving it? Yeah, I should be. My heart tells me no, because I love going there. But intellectually, at least I have options to understand what's going to happen. It's just going to be a matter of time before, you know, there's another major wildfire there. There's been major wildfires on that mountain for as far as I can remember. So at least this knowledge contribution will give people information in which to act. Next slide. So what are the policy implications? Pretty much we've kicked this can down the road. California is probably more progressive than any other state when it comes to climate change. It's certainly not perfect. There's competing interests, business, and I'm a business guy. I don't want to see you know, the economy destroyed where we're all eating cat food. I don't believe we should all go back to the wagon train days and live in teepees and, you know, ride a horse into town. Of course, that's a problem in itself, right? Methane gas. And methane gas, by the way, is one of the biggest polluters and contributors to climate change. So I'm not into that. Am I going to tell you you can't eat meat anymore? No. So there's mitigation and there's adaptation. And I'm going to emphasize the adaptation part, not so much the mitigation where you can't eat a hamburger, you have to walk to work, you can't drive, there's no economy, it's been destroyed. I don't think that's a sensible solution, in my opinion. But I think we can adapt to this. So that the policy implications for government are how to deal with this. What kind of plan of action are they going to come with this? What are they going to do to, you know, rebuild roads, rebuild infrastructure, move military base? For example, Norfolk, Virginia is a major submarine base. And when you have ships, they have to have a certain height in the dock. You just can't like expect, you know, the sea to rise to the dock level and then the ship just floats to the top. So all those military docks and ports are going to have to be rebuilt. And those are the policy implications that I'm talking about. Next slide. So I won't go too much in the review of literature, but I just wanted to illustrate this is that anything we do here, especially in an academic situation, we have to look at what scholarly articles have been written previously about this situation. We have to have a scientific data base in order to come to some sort of conclusion. It's not something that you can just read out of the New York Times or the LA Times or you know, some magazine and come to a conclusion. So by doing a thorough review of literature, we'll be able to do this. So today I just wanted to talk about climate change and kind of give you a preview of some of the research that I'm working on and how we can apply this to our investments. So when I do these kind of studies or learning, it's always in the context of how do I apply it to my investments? How do I improve the way I invest or pick stocks? How do I mitigate risk? And so by looking at this, I might not buy companies that have a lot of real estate on the Florida coast. I might not buy a lot of real estate that could be impacted by hurricanes. In timber, which we have 3 timber companies, one of the reasons we bought 3 different types is for geographical diversification. So one timber company has a lot of timber in Georgia and Florida, which could be subject to hurricanes and flooding. We might think about divesting from that. So there's a lot of good things that come out from studying that. And this is what differentiates, I believe, us from a lot of investment managers, is that we take an academic and intellectual approach to look at both risk and how we can improve our process. And I think that's what separates us from a lot of others. So I want to thank you, Katie, for being part of this. And I want to thank the listeners for having an open mind about climate change. And I welcome any of your comments. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you for joining us for the special edition of Coffee with Dr. Steve and Katie.